Good morning. It's 17 December, 6:49 a.m. here in Central Florida. Just installed Tesla FSD 13.2.1 yesterday morning. I drove once unrecorded yesterday and had several disengagements. The more serious of which is it tried to drive through a swinging barricade like every other version has. And it actually sped up when it came to a school zone rather than slowing down, even though there was a flashing light and a speed limit sign saying the speed limit was 25. The car accelerated to 44 before I disengaged to avoid getting a ticket in the active school zone. That's certainly a problem that should have been taken care of since school zones are everywhere. Somehow the people preceded with the software never drive through school zones, or never have that failure at least never show it on their videos, but that is a concern. After everybody said this version was supposed to be the one that wasn't going to require supervision. But yes, it still requires supervision. Enter the roundabout and take so driving out of the neighborhood now, heading to work over in the Lake Nona area. I'm in South Kissimmee, not too far from Poinciana, Florida. And Lake Nona is just to the southeast of the international airport. So I have the GPS navigation turned on. Now I'll go ahead and activate the FSD. The release notes for this version talk about increased camera resolution processing and more sharing of information between other cars with respect to construction areas and closed roads. Haven't really run across that yet, but that all sounds good at least. Been a little while since we did the last video, since it was a little while before the last software update. The configuration for this version wants you to set the maximum speed. They recommend 40% above the speed limit. Well, 40% above the speed limit in a 70-mile-an-hour zone would be a bit more than I'm comfortable with, as that would be pushing close to 100 miles an hour. So I set it down to 15% above the speed limit. I don't see much good reason for going above that. Many times the speed limit itself is not safe, such as on an exit ramp, for example. So this is a 25-mile-an-hour zone inside the neighborhood, and it says the max speed is set at 29, and that's certainly a reasonable speed. I've put out 2 more books since the last video. One is a history book of Venezuela. It's titled Venezuela, History, Crisis, and Opportunity, where part 1 covers the colonial period, part 2 covers the rise of Hugo Chavez, and part 3 proposes a way forward to get out of the mess that is Venezuela and Cuba. It's available in English and Spanish on Amazon. Audio for the English version is in production. Haven't decided if I'm going to do the Spanish version in audio or not. And then another book released yesterday, Bloody Bananas. Sounds kind of gross, but it's about the history of the United Fruit Company, which was involved in all sorts of shenanigans over the course of the last century, but including into the 2000s, where they had to pay $38 million in a lawsuit for paying hit squads in Colombia to kill people striking against the company, with lots of deaths. After this, their reputation was so damaged they changed the name of the company to Chiquita Bananas. Imagine that. So yeah, Bloody Bananas tells about the long and very consistent history of that company. Again, available in both English and Spanish versions. It's already out for Kindle. Paperback and hardcover versions should be available probably later today. Check them out. So here we're coming up towards the exit of the neighborhood, and there is a gate that is closed and a speed bump in front of it. So we're slowing down for the speed bump, I guess. It does show a little bit on the map, and we have stopped to wait and let the gate open up, which is a good thing. It steered a little bit to the right, but did manage to stay. Well, I said stayed in the lane. It changed lanes to the right lane, which is okay since we do have to turn right as we leave the neighborhood. So it did that pretty well. Yesterday when I came through it, it made the lanes change as it passed through the gate, since there was enough of an opening to get through the gate.
Now turn right onto Pleasant Hill Road.
So this is an unprotected right turn with a stop sign. Usually a lot of traffic here, but it's early, so let's see. Pretty good visibility. So we did a legal stop, and now we're creeping. At night, it's not always easy to tell when somebody's in your lane versus the left lane when you're looking at the headlights. But we're going ahead and pulling out. We're in the mode of average aggressiveness. So I did that okay. We're coming up on 7 a.m. There's a little bit more light outside. Clean the window a little bit. So this is a Tesla Model Y 2024 performance version. Less than a year old, but already has about 35,000 miles on it. That's one thing about Teslas. You do tend to drive a lot since it's a little more fun to drive. Plus, I drove several times to South Carolina for college football games, and several times to the Florida Keys in the other direction, as well as driving up to Nashville, Tennessee, and Chattanooga, Tennessee. Plus in Orlando, things are kind of spread out, so you can't go anywhere less than 30 minutes, seems like. A common meme is Orlando is an hour from Orlando, depending on where you're going. We're just now getting in the peak tourist season, which is near Christmas. The busiest week of the year here in Orlando is the week between Christmas and New Year's. Of course, this is supplemented by people coming to the college football bowl games, including my team, the Gamecocks, which will be playing Illinois on December 31st in the Citrus Bowl. So speaking of 1 hour, I'm in South Orlando going to Southeast Orlando. I've already been driving, I guess, 10 minutes or so, and the GPS says 1 hour, 1 minute to go this 26 miles. You can see there's certainly some traffic here in the Poinciana area, at least, but fairly clear once you get out of the South Kissimmee, it looks like. Lots of superchargers in the Orlando area, as you can see on the map. Of course, everybody that's able to should be charging at home, since at least in Florida, that has about 1/3 the cost of using a supercharger. Though there are still some free chargers around. 2 of the hospitals where I work, there are free chargers. They're not superchargers, but they add around 20 miles per connected hour, and free is free. Some hotels offer this still. But many of these chargers were installed when Teslas were rare, and having 1 or 2 chargers was a great thing, and now Teslas are everywhere. So good luck finding one of those chargers available. But of course, the supercharger network has been growing just about exponentially. The private chargers have a role, though, especially in apartment complexes where there's lots of people that are young professionals living in apartments and don't have their own chargers. So I was checking the odometer and got a thing warning me to pay attention to the road. So I did, and it turned off. But I was checking the mileage, 33,800 miles now. As usual, I will speed up the non-speaking parts of this video, unless something really interesting is happening. I'm using an Insta 360 camera, but I've got it in single camera mode. That avoids me having to go through a second step, editing, to convert the 360 images into flat video. But this still records 4K video. Now I have the camera mounted on a selfie stick that I have wedged between the driver's seat and the center console. As I might have mentioned before, Poinciana is a group of neighborhoods. It's not really a city, but it has a population of 70 or 80,000 people, a large Puerto Rican component. And there are not nearly enough jobs in the Poinciana area to support this number of people. So the vast majority in the area that are working drive up towards Kissimmee and Orlando every morning and come back every afternoon. And that pretty much overwhelms the highways and the roads with lots of traffic, as we see here going north. My group has an office here in Poinciana, but the next 2 days I'll be at the Lake Nona office, which is quite a hike from here. Lake Nona is a growth area, younger population, lots of apartment complexes, townhouses, etc. Medical City is there, which is a group of hospitals, which includes the University of Central Florida Medical School, the Veterans Hospital, the HCA Florida Lake Nona UCF Hospital, with others under construction, including one from Advent Health. Again, this is all just southeast of the international airport. So lots of space for expansion in the area. several nice restaurants in the area if you're looking for a new place to go eat. The southern beltway of Orlando, which is Highway 417, runs right through Lake Nona, which is pretty convenient for transportation, and it's really only 10 or 15 minutes or so from the international airport. Again, depending on traffic. Everything depends on traffic here. So tell me what you think about the idea of unsupervised FSD. How's that going to work? Is the owner of the car still going to be liable for any accidents that occur in unsupervised FSD? Will we be required to sign papers to hold Tesla harmless for any accidents that occur while we're driving that? Because it's a little hard to see how Tesla could financially handle being liable for millions of cars doing FSD unsupervised, even if it's very safe, safer than human drivers, which would seem likely. Do they really want to carry that liability forever for any accidents that are judged to be the fault of the FSD? Or is some sort of shared arrangement going to happen? One theory is that there will never be an unsupervised version because of this liability issue. What would insurance cost? Will it be less expensive because the cars are safer, or will it be more expensive because Tesla will be an attractive lawsuit target given their resources? Lawyers don't choose who to sue necessarily based on who has the most fault. They sue based on who has the most money. And with a $1.4 trillion market cap, that would be Tesla right now. So that will attract lots of lawsuits. Even if they win every one, it's expensive to defend lawsuits. What do you think? Leave a message in the comments if you have an opinion on this. One wonders how much they've thought this through. You'd think they have to be thinking about it. But in some ways, the liability and insurance issues may be a bigger deal than the technical issues. And even if Tesla does accept liability for these accidents, if you're the owner of the device, you're going to get sued as well, whether you had any direct control over what was going on or not. Much like if you have a swimming pool and somebody drowns in the swimming pool, they can sue you, even if you did everything right, even if they were trespassing to get onto the property and wind up drowning in your swimming pool. And what about your passengers? If a passenger gets injured while you're using unsupervised FSD, if you have resources, they're going to come after you as well as against Tesla. Of course, Tesla can be sued even if you're just driving manually, if there's any opportunity to say the car played a role in the accident somehow. And now that Tesla has accident avoidance software built in even when FSD is turned off, you theoretically could sue Tesla for failure to avoid an accident. You could claim the car should have been able to avoid that particular type of accident. Any attorneys care to comment on this? And with FSD, you wonder about the meetings they must have had inside Tesla. Let's say an accident is inevitable and the car has to make a choice. It can hit a telephone pole, endangering the occupants of the car, or it can run over a group of 3 school children, saving the occupants of the car, but killing the school children. Which path should the car take? Who is the car's customer? Who paid for the car? Should not the car give priority to keeping the occupants of the car safe? What responsibility do we have to protecting people outside the car that perhaps are not Tesla customers? Some of these scenarios may seem far-fetched, but it's not hard to imagine possible choices the car could make. And most of these choices need to be made at Tesla headquarters before the software rolls out. Any comments on that? Things you don't always think of, but somebody had to think of it. One would hope. Every time you make this trip, a different route is picked due to the traffic of the moment. Most of the time we'd be turning right on this South Orange Blossom Trail. It looks like this time we're going straight to avoid some of the traffic in downtown Kissimmee. Is it cold where you're watching? It's 69 degrees here, 7:17 a.m. December 17th. I think the temperature is going to head up towards 80 later today. We probably get about 10 cold days a year in Central Florida, but very rare to get below the freezing level of 32. But it's not so rare to have beach weather in January either. But not every day, so you do have to check. I'm a little overdue to do some surf fishing. Lower the camera just a little bit below my eye level. So we're 35 minutes into the video and we've traveled 11 miles. So we'll open up the visualization a little bit. It's always nice to see what the car is looking at and thinking about. So now we got a school zone and we're actually slowing down. I don't know if it read the sign or if it just had this on the map, but this is an improvement over yesterday when it blew right through the school zone. So here's another school zone. Flashing yellow lights and a speed limit 20 miles an hour. We're slowing down, but of course the car in front of us slowed down, so I don't know if this was the car's idea or just following the traffic. So we'll give it the benefit of the doubt on that one. But the previous school zone, the car definitely saw it and slowed down. We're now in northern Kissimmee, not too far from the Orlando city limit. Time to break out the sunglasses as the sun rises. Another school zone coming up. 20-mile-an-hour speed limit, it says. And no attempt to slow down for this one. 36, 37, 38. So there are flashing yellow lights, a school zone sign, and 2 speed limit signs. And the car blew right through, actually accelerating as it came through the school zone. So in those previous school zones, do you think the car saw it? Or is it just based on map data, which maybe is defective and doesn't include all the school zones? Hard to know. I'm not sure Tesla really publishes that information. Various drivers, such as myself, kind of guess what it's doing or what it's thinking or not thinking, but no easy way to know for sure. But happily, I didn't get a ticket for going through the school zone too fast, but I certainly could have. And there's another flashing yellow light ahead, but without a sign from our direction to say what it's about. So that was the school zone coming from the other direction. Almost directly into the rising sun. So the car's software doesn't seem to have any trouble seeing the traffic or the lanes in spite of this. Bright enough I need to lower the visor a little bit. Yeah, why don't we do another commercial? I don't know if you can see that screen, but that's Heart of Venezuela, a political thriller set in modern-day Venezuela, also a medical thriller. Some exciting cath lab scenes in Venezuela. Also available on Amazon for Kindle paperback hardcover. And one more historical thriller, historical fiction, Secrets of Potosi. Potosi is a mountain in Bolivia where half the world's silver came from in the 1500s. At one point, that city was larger than London in terms of population and was the home of the Spanish Mint for hundreds of years. There's still active mines in that mountain today. So a chance to have a thriller and be entertained and learn some history of South America. Available for audiobook on audible.com as well as paperback, Kindle, hardcover, all on Amazon. And both are available in English and Spanish versions. We just made it through that yellow light, it looks like. We're now in Orlando, passing by historic Gatorland, which is a pretty good deal. It's only about $17 to get in. You can spend a good half day there It's a commercial alligator farm. They have over 5,000 alligators on the premises. With lots of attractions for tourists, some shows, and some walking boardwalks through a swamp area where you might see some wildlife. But definitely the wildlife will see you at least. But $17 in this day of $200 Disney tickets, that's not a bad way to spend half a day when you're here in Orlando. The place has been open, I think, since the 1950s. You can check out my videos from Gatorland elsewhere on the channel.
Enter.
Thinking about those school zones, if the car indeed is trying to find these things visually, it would be kind of nice if they could share information around the fleet. Because even if the car doesn't detect it every time it passes through, certainly at least one of the cars would detect it and could pass on the information to other cars on the network. School zones don't move around much, so even if the updates only occurred when there was a software update, it would still be more functional than the current system. Maybe it's a storage issue since there are thousands and thousands of school zones around the world. So you might not want to have the world's school zone database in your car, but it might be nice to have the ones within a few hours of your house at least. Or just do a better job visually. The last few months I've had a Starlink Mini mounted in my car so I can get better internet bandwidth. I don't always attach the car to it, but sometimes if there's a poor cell signal, I'll let the car get the Wi-Fi from the Starlink. I have the Starlink antenna mounted to the sunroof with suction cups. There's a product for that on Amazon. And it's powered through a cigarette lighter plug, though I had to go through several adapters before I found one that had enough power to actually do the job. It draws about 20 watts normally, but needs 40 or 50 to start up. I've not had any trouble driving around with it, but if the vision of the sky is blocked either with trees or overpasses, you will have some dropouts. But as long as the sky is visible, you'll pretty much have at least reasonable bandwidth, anywhere from 10 megabits per second, which is pretty slow, to over 100 megabits per second, which is pretty fast for in-motion satellite.
Now turn left to take the Florida 417 North ramp.
So we've got to merge onto a pretty busy interstate type highway, the Southern Beltway, which is 417. 2 on-ramps, as you can see. and going into the sun as we do it. So that was pretty easy. The sun is showing how dirty my glass is. There's a lot of construction in this area, so the stripes that identify the lanes are not always that obvious to this human driver, as they try to cover up old stripes as they paint new stripes. And with the glare of the sun, it's always possible to lose track of a lane, but so far so good. But I've got my hand on the wheel just in case, because the car has been known to do some stupid things at times. Occasionally it'll take an exit that it shouldn't take, and other times it'll just drive right by the exit that it should take, even though it's clearly marked on the GPS screen that an exit is called for. And you know, there's some places if you miss the exit, it might be 30 minutes to the next one. So that's kind of a big deal. So we're 10 miles from the final destination. The final destination sits right on the off-ramp. So airplanes are approaching the Orlando airport from the south. I see a jet about to cross over the highway up ahead. Orlando has 4 north-south runways. 2 groups of 2 that are separated about a mile or so apart. It's usually around the 10th busiest airport in the country. The video currently is an hour and 5 minutes long, but again, I've sped up the non-speaking parts.
To stay on Florida 417 north toward Orlando. The
417 starts on Interstate 4, southwest of Orlando, passes south of the airport, and then turns north and joins I-4 again, northeast of Orlando. So it's both the south and the east beltway. We've already passed the exit for the airport, so we're heading up on Lake Nona area and medical center that I spoke of earlier. The right exit lane has just opened up and we're taking it. That's good.
Now take exit 23 on the right. Seven cars run. Now turn right.
Turning into the parking lot at the destination.
Now your destination is on the right.
So we're kind of creeping along at 5 or 6 miles an hour. Somebody's pulling out of a parking space. Let's see if I can see a parking spot. So we're still in navigation mode, and it just let us stop. So let's take a spot there. I was going to see if it was going to let me engage parking while FSD was still engaged, but not yet. So there we are. Overall, a pretty successful drive, with the exception of a couple of school zones that it missed. So until next time, see you later on.